Abandoned under alien skies. The purple-gray sky stretched endlessly above the cracked wasteland, its alien beauty lost on the broken figure lying among the jagged rocks. Jereia's breathing came in shallow gasps, each one a struggle against the pain that coursed through her battered body. Her torn clothes offered little protection against the harsh wind that carried the scent of distant storms. She had been there for hours, maybe days. Time seemed meaningless when death felt so close. The memory of her family's transport ship disappearing into the horizon played over and over in her mind like a cruel song. Her father's cold stare, her brother's averted eyes, the mechanical hiss of the door sealing shut, all because she had dared to show emotion when their youngest sibling died. On her world, tears were weakness. Grief was dishonor. And weakness, her people believed, deserved only abandonment. Jereia had begged them to reconsider, had crawled after their ship until her knees bled, but they never looked back. Now the desert stretched around her in all directions, dotted with the bones of others who had been deemed unworthy. The scavenger beasts would come soon, she could see their shadows circling in the distance, patient and hungry. Her legs trembled as she tried to stand, but her strength had long since fled. So she lay back against the cold stone and closed her eyes, whispering a final goodbye to the twin suns that were beginning their descent toward the horizon. That's when she heard the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, but somehow careful. Not the skittering of desert predators or the metallic clank of her people's armor. These steps belonged to something else entirely. Through her cracked lips, she managed a weak sound of surprise as a shadow fell across her face. The figure standing above her was unlike anything she had seen before. Tall and bipedal like her own kind, but wearing strange, soft clothing and a transparent helmet that revealed an alien face beneath. The creature's skin was pale, almost pink, and its eyes, those strange, round eyes, seemed to hold something she had never seen in her own people's gaze. Compassion. The stranger's touch. Jereia tried to recoil as the human knelt beside her, her survival instincts screaming warnings that had been drilled into her since childhood. Never trust outsiders. Never show vulnerability. But her body betrayed her, too weak to flee, too broken to fight. The human spoke in a soft, rhythmic language she didn't understand, but his tone was gentle, almost soothing. She watched with a mixture of fear and fascination as he removed a pack from his shoulders and began extracting strange objects, small bottles filled with clear liquid, strips of white cloth, and tools she couldn't identify. When he reached toward her bleeding arm, she flinched and tried to push him away with what little strength remained. But the human paused, showing her his empty palms in a gesture that somehow transcended language. He was asking for permission, she realized. No one had ever asked her permission for anything. Slowly, carefully, he cleaned her wounds with the clear liquid. It burned at first, making her gasp, but then the pain began to ebb. The cloth he wrapped around her arm was softer than anything she owned, and his movements were precise but gentle. When he finished tending to her visible injuries, he slipped his arms beneath her and lifted her from the rocks. Jereia had expected pain, expected to be dropped when her dead weight became too much. Instead, the human held her steady against his chest, and she could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat through his strange clothing. It was then that the full impossibility of the situation struck her. Her own family had left her to die, but this creature, this human from a distant world, was carrying her to safety without asking for anything in return. As the twin suns painted the sky in shades of red and gold, and the first stars began to appear in the darkening heavens, Jereia found herself drifting between consciousness and sleep, cradled in the arms of a stranger who had shown her more kindness in one day than she had received in her entire life. Questions in the shelter. Jereia woke to warmth and the sound of something bubbling over a small fire. The shelter around her was unlike anything from her world, constructed from lightweight metal and some kind of flexible material that seemed to breathe with the wind. Soft light filtered through translucent panels, and the air carried the unfamiliar but pleasant aroma of cooking food. The human sat nearby, tending to a pot while various small devices hummed quietly around him. When he noticed her stirring, he approached with a cup filled with steaming liquid. His face, now visible without the helmet, was kind but weathered, with small lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. "Joel," he said, pointing to himself. The word was simple, and she understood it was his name. She accepted the cup with trembling hands, surprised by the warmth that spread through her fingers. The liquid inside was strange but nourishing, giving her strength she hadn't felt in days. Still, doubt gnawed at her mind like a persistent wound. Why was he helping her? In her experience, every act of kindness came with a price. Was he planning to sell her? Make her a servant? Her people had stories of other species who collected the abandoned for their own purposes. But as the hours passed, Joel made no demands. He simply checked her bandages, offered her food, and gave her space to rest. That night, as desert winds howled outside the shelter's protective walls, Jereia lay awake listening to Joel's steady breathing. For the first time since childhood, someone had wrapped her in softness instead of leaving her to face the harsh world alone. The feeling was so foreign that she almost didn't trust it. She had been taught that the universe was cold and unforgiving, that survival meant never depending on others. Yet here was a being from another world entirely, sharing his shelter and supplies with someone he had every reason to ignore. As sleep finally claimed her, one thought echoed in her mind: maybe everything she had been taught about strength and weakness was wrong. Learning to trust. Days passed in the shelter, and with each sunrise, Jereia grew stronger. Joel had fashioned a routine that seemed designed around her healing, checking her wounds each morning, preparing simple but nourishing meals, and maintaining respectful distance while remaining close enough to help if needed. Slowly, Jereia began to understand fragments of his language. He would point to objects and say their names, patiently repeating words until she could echo them back. Water, food, safe, each new word was a small bridge between their worlds. In return, she began to share words from her own language, watching his face light up with genuine interest as he struggled with the unfamiliar sounds. Through these gradual exchanges, she learned that Joel was an explorer, studying the plants and rocks of her world. He showed her his journals, filled with careful drawings and notes in his flowing script. His excitement about discovery was infectious, so different from her people's rigid focus on strength and dominance. One evening, as they sat by the fire sharing a meal, Jereia found herself telling him about her family's abandonment. The words came haltingly at first, a mixture of his language and hers, but Joel listened with an attention that made her feel truly heard for the first time. When she finished, she expected judgment or pity. Instead, Joel simply placed a gentle hand on her shoulder and said something she was beginning to understand: "You are brave. Brave. Not weak, not shameful, not a burden." The word settled into her heart like a seed in fertile soil. As her physical wounds healed, Jereia realized that something deeper was mending too. The constant fear that had governed her life was slowly being replaced by something she had never dared to hope for: the possibility that she might be worthy of kindness simply for being alive. Under Joel's patient care, she was learning that strength could exist alongside compassion, and that showing emotion didn't make someone weak, it made them human. A new dawn. Weeks had passed when Joel's communication device crackled to life with urgent messages. His research expedition was ending, and a transport ship would arrive soon to take him back to human space. As he explained the situation in their now shared vocabulary, Jereia felt a familiar cold fear creeping back into her heart. She was being left behind again. But Joel surprised her, as he had so many times before. "Come with me," he said simply, his eyes holding that same compassion she had first seen in the wasteland. "My people, they will understand. They will welcome you." The concept was almost too strange to grasp. An entire civilization that might accept an abandoned alien simply because someone vouched for her worth. Jereia had spent her whole life believing that belonging had to be earned through strength and suppression of feeling. Yet Joel was offering her a place where she might be valued for who she was, not what she could hide. When the human transport arrived, Jereia stood beside Joel at the threshold of her old life and a new beginning. The ship's crew, alerted by Joel's messages, greeted her with curious but kind faces. As the wasteland where she had nearly died fell away beneath them, Jereia realized that she was no longer the same person who had been left for dead under alien skies. Joel had given her more than rescue, he had given her the radical idea that she deserved care, that her emotions were not weakness but humanity, and that family could be chosen rather than simply endured. As their ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying her toward a world where tears were not forbidden and compassion was not considered failure, Jereia looked out at the stars and smiled. She had been left to die in the wasteland, abandoned by blood relatives who saw only shame in her feelings. But a stranger from across the galaxy had seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself. Under those alien skies, she had learned the most important truth of all: sometimes the family that saves you is the one you never expected to find. Joel squeezed her hand gently as the stars streaked past the viewport, and Jereia knew that whatever challenges awaited her in this new life, she would face them not as someone discarded and worthless, but as someone loved. The end.